Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's Joe with you here. It's October 3rd. It's a Thursday. Let's get into the currency recap. I've got my 2 cents. You know how this works. Take responsibility for the outcome when you follow along with this class. I'm going to break down the meaningful news of the day. Let's take a look at these markets and currencies technically, and let's see if we can't share some trades with the community.
Disclaimer. This video was created for professional Forex and crypto traders. Maverick Currencies is a proprietary trading firm that employs professional traders around the world. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits they generate. All trades and analysis in this video are for professional traders only. If you are interested in becoming a professional Forex and currency trader for Maverick, click the apply button in the video description. Let's break down what happened today.
As we move into the market analysis, folks, you're going to see that we did have a couple currencies that did move. First off, let's get into the news of the day. I think the big one was the pound. The pound slips on some hawkish tone from the Bank of England. Bailey came out and actually just kind of said, look, we got to be a little bit more aggressive in the future if need be. And it actually pushed the futures down. And for the first little bit there, the pound slipped. In fact, it was the weakest of the day. A flat day when it comes to complacency and not a lot of worries or sell-offs. We've seen this US dollar just continue higher. And guess what, folks? It did it again. So let's break it down real quick. So the US dollar up about another 0.5%, 0.54, but the pound you can see slipped 0.63. I also saw that the New Zealand dollar actually slid a little bit, 0.31. It was a pretty aggressive looking move, momentum-wise, but we'll take a look at it when it comes to the overall daily chart. It wasn't that big of a deal. So I don't know if I want to run out and beat down a New Zealand dollar that had a volatility score of -3 against something else. I just think it was a pretty aggressive reaction. We'll see if that continues or if it becomes sustainable. Other than that, guys, take a look at this. Flat across the board. Crypto, 0.52. Gold, 0.02. Oil had another surge to the upside. I think that has a lot to do with what's going on overseas. 3.91. It's actually about $73 a barrel now. So here's your Bitcoin. The strongest was cash, 1.25, just about 1.25% there. Everything else just kind of flat when it comes to cryptos themselves. Now, what I saw in the overall SPX and the US markets is a very bullish move. And this is a bull pullback. This is something that it's one of my favorites because when you see price correction, it kind of solidifies or shows that, hey, there was an area there where the price decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and turn around because this sell-off is done. And buyers come in at a specific point. Usually it's a support and resistance level. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to turn around right now and move higher, but showing that it is actually kind of slowing at this area or trying to create a pivot point is definitely glass half full. We got a little bit of a slope here up on the 50, a slope on the 20, and this could easily go from a +2, which is what I have it as, to a +3 if it turns. So let's take a look at what's coming up event-wise. Now, a couple of things that came out, I'm trying to look for it. The ADP non-farm payroll change, that was actually pretty optimistic. Now, it beat the numbers it was supposed to. Expansion area is over 200K, but when you talk about a Fed that's looking for a soft landing, you see a little bit more than expected off of a lower number. It's right in line. I can see how the markets take this positively because we are actually in a very comfortable place when it comes to what the Fed wants the economy to be looking like. Unemployment claims were pretty much right in line. We got the financial services PMI and the ISM services PMI up a little higher. So everything's looking pretty decent. And I imagine that's probably why the dollar is actually climbing. We've seen it climb over the last few days. Other than that, I mean, when the Fed gets it right, I don't know how the dollar doesn't get a little bit more optimistic. So let's see if we can't take advantage of that moving forward. Now, what do we got left, folks? We've got 2 things that I'm going to kind of keep an ear out on. That's going to be the non-farm employment change, non-farm payrolls, and the unemployment rate itself. I don't think it's going to be, if those numbers are in line and they're not too far off, I imagine we continue a pretty glass half full optimistic move in the US markets. So let's just go out and take a look at some of the currencies that have been moving. And I mean, obviously the first one I want to take a look at is going to be the ones that move the most. So I'm straight into the US dollar velocity score, and take a look at this, folks. It has been doing nothing over the last few days, but just going higher and higher and higher. Let me box that in. So we had a flip off the bottom there. Take a look at that RSI, the flip over in the moving averages, and it's just surging higher. Now, does that have a lot to do with the optimism in the U.S. markets compared to some of the weakness in some of the other markets? The answer is yes. We got a little bit of a hiccup there with a policy change, I should say, or I should say a staffing change when it comes to the yen, right? A little bit of a hiccup there. It was a pretty good move to the downside. And then we got some hawkish outlook out of the Bank of England, which would also probably just kind of add to the strength of the U.S. dollar. Overall, folks, it's definitely a +3 still. It's just moved higher or above the SARs, the moving averages, and the RSI itself. Now let's take a look at our biggest loser for the day, and that's the pound. And this is a little bit of a hiccup. Look at this move. It was difficult to catch because it came all at once. The RSI, you could make an argument that it's been going down for quite some time. It's difficult to include 4 or 5 days in velocity score, and really difficult to kind of gauge a move like that. And it's definitely reactionary. What we're seeing subsequently is the oversold bounce. So I'm not going to just beat this down to nothing. I'm going to just try to give it its due. We did have a flip in the SAR. The overall movement of the moving average has been down with velocity. So I'm going to give it a -1, a -2, and we got a little bit of this weird hiccup there. So I'm going to keep that as a 0 for now because I'm not done with its oversold bounce. So it's definitely at least a -2 on the velocity score. Now, what makes this difficult is if you take a look at this thing on the daily chart, it's just an aggressive pullback, an aggressive bull pullback. Now, there could be some problems moving forward when it comes to some of the policies threatened, I should say, by the Bank of England, or the expectations of, hey, we might need to be more aggressive, but it's still within this line. Yeah, today's candlestick is a little ugly, definitely looking ugly here on the RSI. So if you want to play this as kind of a 0, folks, in the longer term, makes total sense. So next, I kind of wanted to move over to the yen. Let's take a look at it. I'm going to go to the velocity side of things. And you can see it's having this bounce. It did get beat down quite a bit, and I do still like it. I still think that it's got some weakness in it, right? We got this nice, looks like the RSI wants to roll over again. It's below that 50 mark. We've got the SARs flipped. We've got a drop here in the moving average. What I'm going to do is be a little bit more patient. I'm going to pair this with something strong, something like the US dollar, which is kind of strange to do the dollar yen, right? But we'll see where that goes. Or the Aussie, because the Aussie's been hanging there. But if I can see this roll over here on the velocity side, it might give me a little bit better of an opportunity to trade, especially if I'm looking for something shorter term. Past that, folks, that's pretty much all I've got when I'm looking to analyze the currencies. Not a lot of difference and change over the last little bit, but we did see some divergence from some that we've been looking at. And what I did like was the strength, or I should say the continued strength or stability in the Aussie. Yeah, it was at a +3, but I moved it down to a +2. Take a look at it, folks. Make your own decision. It did slide a little bit, but it's super strong. US hanging in here at a +3. Franc bumped up a little bit, but that pound drop was very interesting, and the New Zealand dollar drop. Now, I am going to just go ahead and just give you my 2 cents. Ignore that. I think it's just a very super aggressive pullback for now. We'll see if anything comes out of it, because if it stays there, then we can actually pair it against something. So I'm going to show you 2 things. The first thing was something that I was excited to see when it comes to possible trades. But tell you the truth, folks, it's just not there. It's what happens when you get 2 currencies that go opposite directions. You miss the trade. So jumping back into it, oh, geez, Joe, the obvious thing would be the Great British Pound against the US dollar. So let's go ahead and jump into it. And as we move into it, you can see on the velocity side, woo, we actually missed this. We had a pretty good rollover there at a support level as it broke below that. And it looks like, oh, geez, we totally missed it. Now, it could continue, right? It could set a base here and we could see a roll lower. This is where you're going to have to go back in time, I should say a few days back, to find support and resistance levels for subsequent targets. Sorry, folks, these lines might not all be straight, but you can see this is decreasing, this is decreasing, this is decreasing. So velocity-wise, the pound US short is a great trade. Now, if you look at the larger picture of this, it's just a pullback. And so you have to ask yourself, hey, am I just going to go ahead and try to play a pullback in an overall uptrending pattern? Or is this going to be something more? Now, what's tough about it is we do see an RSI that's falling and it has slipped below that 50. Of course, we get the flip on the SAR, and it looks like the beginning of what the moving average could be rolling over, but there's no confirmation that this thing is going to continue to fall and, more importantly, break major support levels, right? It needs to break major support levels in the longer term. So yeah, it'd be neat to do a cheeky trade. I'm going to call it cheeky because the pound got a reaction from the Bank of England saying that we got to be more hawkish, and we got the dollar, which is staying stronger because the markets are optimistic on the U.S. side. How long does that last? My answer, folks, not long enough for me to actually trade. So that being said, I figured, hey, let me share something that I do like. Aussie has been strong and the yen has been weak. So let's go back to what works. Here is the Aussie yen, and what I liked about this trade on the daily, we have a breakout to the upside, right? I like this. Not quite an ascending triangle. It's a little flat, but flattening on the RSI, moving up on the averages, the average, a flip on the SAR. I like that. But more importantly, what I really like is the velocity chart. So let's jump over to that. So take a look at this 4-hour chart. It is, I just got done telling you folks, one of my favorite trading patterns, a bull pullback. So not only this letting us know that, hey, we could actually see something turn at a specific pivot point, but we have the opportunity to sit there and be patient and wait for it to confirm above a high, and then draw our trend lines or your Fibonacci's or whatever you guys want to do when it comes to a target. So this is a pretty good opportunity. I know that the RSI is saying that momentum is slowing, which momentum should be slowing, especially in corrective action. But this one is going to be on the front of my list, is the Aussie yen at a bull pullback. I mean, if you want to do something short and sweet, just target the previous resistance area, or like I say, snap the Fibonacci's, trend lines, whatever you guys want. But it seems to be where things are going. And why is that? Well, yen's been weak for quite a while, and the Aussie's been strong for quite a while. Doesn't mean that it's going to. It's just something that is on my radar. Right. So basically, trades are where you find them. Let's take a look at where we sit. So we've seen things push away from that zero again, and mostly it's because of volatility. It pushes things, corrective actions, pullbacks, bear rallies, jumps in that situation. But hey, we find opportunity when it's there. Look to the most consistent. The US dollar continues to climb higher, right? The Great British Pound and the yen reacted to news, and I don't have it written in there, but the Aussie has stayed very stable when it comes to its strength. So let's take the consistently strong against the consistently weak and see if we can't make a shorter term trade there. All right, folks, non-farm payrolls and unemployment rate tomorrow. If the markets are focused on the U.S., it looks like the U.S. is kind of stable. Looks like the soft landing, looks to be in play based on some of those numbers, and more importantly, what the U.S. dollar is doing. Follow your plan. Stay on top of the management. Understand if you're uncomfortable with anything, you don't have to trade. Thanks for joining me, folks, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.